wait for trial at home. You know, they will be charged, but they waited for trial at home. But now 70% of those who are charged are waiting for trials in jail. That's also a lot. But Belarusian protest went through different stages. The first few months, the last August and the fall, were marked by mass mobilization and determination to change the government by peaceful means. Let me share some slide presentation with you. Can you see it? Can you see it? Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, but by peaceful means, and also by expressions of dignity and courage, especially by women when facing arrests and beating, and by solidarity with victims of police brutality. Cultural workers found themselves in the avant-garde of political movement. When the news about tortures of people during the arrests began to circulate, actors of the major state Belarusian theater went on strike. Musicians followed by performing on the streets and in the subways. Artists staged their own strike, taken on the streets as opposed to exhibiting in the official venues. So here you can see on this image a protest, Don't Paint strike. That was organized about the same time, almost at the same time with Kupala Theater and with the musicians. Another action, art of the regime, in which artists were holding the images of bruised and tortured bodies, was staged about, also at the same time, and also in front of the same place, which is state-run Palace of Arts in Minsk. In Minsk, the capital of Belarus. At some point, the protest began to exploit its own aesthetic regime, if we can use the concierge's words, when practically everyone on the streets became a visual activist, when aesthetics was the main motivation for people to get out. For example, to wave a flag that you made, or protect the white and red shrine arranged by neighbors in the yard, or sport self-made outfits, repaint a protest mural raised by the police, as if citizens fulfilled an avant-garde dream of merging aesthetics and life in the most unexpected way. For example, by making a colorful composition with clothes on the balcony, not necessarily thinking about it as art making. Actually, one of my favorite examples that I read in the press was when, after the multiple police repressions against people who dried red and white clothes on the balconies or putting them in the windows, and of course, most of the time intentionally, right, manifesting their allegiance to the alternative Belarus, right, and historic flag. A citizen engaged housing authorities who came to remove his red and white towels from the balcony in an absurd correspondence, asking them to send them instructions how to dry clothes. Anyway, aesthetic activism that emerged in Belarus is similar to other contemporary protests, such as Black Lives Matter, student protesters from Hong Kong, and earlier Occupy Wall Street. All of them signal an emerging paradigm whereby, as artist and writer Gregory Cholet noted, activist art and art of activism blur, transpose, and converge. Julia Ramirez Blanco have described the Occupy movement as both political and aesthetic entity, while Yates McKee proposed that Occupy Wall Street was itself a work of socially engaged art. In other words, anyone, yeah, and here you also see the quotation from Belarusian poet Dmitry Strotsev, who defined the Belarusian protest as asymmetrical, aesthetically calibrated response to the state brutal force. In other words, anyone who fell out of the daily schedules create art these days. On the other hand, precariousness, economic and political instabilities that professional artists embody, especially in Belarus, where the art market is rudimental and artists still rely on state-run institutions who don't really serve them, right? And they never did, because they only served to the top of their, artists' union nomenclature. So this precariousness bring them to the front of social political transformation. Our participants can elaborate on that a little bit more in relation to Belarus. I will only add that over the past month, we watched how alternative and independent spaces that serve the communities and even forged the communities, at least in the last 10 years, have been closing. They were shut by authorities, or sometimes they just made a decision to close because of the security, because of their issue with police and the insecurities. Anyway, revolutions and insurrections always open opportunities for artists. And the question I posed for this discussion is actually quite a few questions. What forms of organization and collaboration between artists and non-artists have emerged during this protest? What alliances and coalitions have emerged or should emerge, maybe they will emerge in the future, to ensure cultural survival in the future, given that in Belarus and Russia as well, culture itself is under threat. And again, I want to draw the comparison with the Western, European and American societies, where culture is usually a shelter, right? Culture can shelter the people, protesters, who want to express the political views. And culture creates this kind of safe space for them. But in Russia and Belarus, it's not the case, right? So that because the culture itself is under threat. So how, in this situation, when independent art spaces have closed, exhibition canceled, and cultural practitioners even went to jail, not only protests, but any public expressions are no longer possible. How should artists act? I know there are also ethical questions, whether art production in traditional sense should stop in time of a revolution. The question that we put in the press release attributed to Egyptian artists, right, who formulated this question during the Arab Spring in 2011. And I hope we will be able to discuss it too. And since we have an international crowd here, we can brainstorm strategies and methods with Antonina and Alexei, also with those who already went through similar experiences. Everybody is welcome to participate and share their thoughts, and comparisons with other protests are welcome. That's all I wanted to say. Now I want to pass the baton to Antonina.
Thank you, Olga. Thank you.
Thank you. First of all, I would like to say several words that the dialogue between me and Alexei that has a huge history, because we keep in touch. I think for the first day of protests, and to tell the truth, these dialogues about protests, about artists, about art, Belarusian art as well, truly helped me avoid frustration, the level of frustration, to make a distance for reflection. So it's so the article that Olga have mentioned, the article in Moscow Art Magazine, was a result of this huge discussion between me and Alexei, and I saw that it's really interesting because we always speak in different positions, because I am a curator and researcher, and Alexei is most well known as artist. So I think that it's a great communication between curator and artist, and we have not completely different, but of course we have a difference in our interpretation of art and the role of artist in the protest as well. So I think that it can be a very interesting communication. So I want to return to our topic. And the question that Jo Ali asked in her article, "Not Time for Art," I think it's very appropriate for the Belarusian art sphere and art context, because during the protest and as well as during our preparation of exhibition every day that opened in Mistetsky Arsenal in Kiev, we communicate with many Belarusian artists, and we always, time by time, we heard something like that artist asked that during the protests, the period of depression and the first days of violence repression, or the following months of repression of against any form of disagreements, or any form of how to say, or any form of resistance. Many Belarusian artists ask, what the hell is art? Or, for example, maybe why is art really neat, especially now when people being killed in the street, or as Olga have mentioned, that today we have more than 300 official political prisoners in Belarus. So it's a really sensitive question for us. Or we always heard another other question: what can I do as artist? And because many artists felt and feel deep frustration, seeing how ordinary people, even probably these people have never visited a museum and galleries of contemporary art, how these ordinary people effectively use the language of art. The art language no longer belongs to a small professional group of artists. And of course, that's why artists ask, what do they really may do in this context? But I think that I suppose that Alexei told this about this in more detail. I would like to say that, of course, the Belarusian protest context and how people and the reason and the situation, how people use their language of art, and I think that changes the context of the context of artist and the art. And of course, I think that it's really important that we should ask many questions. For example, where is the border between art and non-art? Where is the border between me as artist and me as citizen, or the border between political and aesthetic, of course, it's a very important question. And I'd like to say about, I'd like to I'd like to show several slides about different strategies, how different Belarusian artists use different strategies to work with political context and to work with the figure and to interpret themselves as artists, how it changed. And 1 minute, I try to share slides. Okay, first of all, I would like to say that notwithstanding the fact that in my mind, Belarusian process and artists is good context for rare understanding or reflect about new instruments or new position about artist as a figure. Of course, we know that several Belarusian artists continue to use the previous strategies or that concern with aestheticization and heroization, or how to say, when we speak about political art or actionism, they use method aestheticization or heroization. And of course, I'd like to mention the action of Alexei Kuzmich, I believe. It was a two-part action where he appeared as Jesus Christ. This is very classical hero, how to say this, very classical appearance as actionist artist as a hero. So, and I think that maybe today we should reflect that this gesture as a problematic gesture, because this and I would like to discuss it, because to my mind, it can be problematic because there are many aestheticization, there are too much aestheticization in this section in comparison with political point of view. And of course, I'm not sure about when we speak about Belarusian protest, we speak about the protest against hierarchy structure, authority structure, patriarchy structure, and can we oppose to this force hierarchy structure another force hierarchy figure as an artist. That's why when we discuss in our magazine, in our article for Moscow Art Magazine, I told that the figure of artist is non-ethical. Of course, I don't think that every artist as a figure is non-ethical, but I would like to say that this is the figure of artist as a hero, the hero in one hero gesture. Artist maybe is not ethical, especially when we speak about during the violence period of protest, because we discussed a lot with any other artists, and I know that many artists in Belarus especially didn't do any activist gestures during the first day of protest, because they didn't want to exploit the political context. But what's next is really interesting, that as I say, that very often, 1 minute, I try to, oh my God, something goes wrong. When we speak about political activists, gestures in the art sphere, very often it's very difficult to mark as art, or even artists or cultural workers who make this political gesture don't describe it as art, or it's very difficult to define this border. As example, I can see we can discard the Ulyana Nevzorova happening. This poster could be the reason for my detention, and the next her action I will not be able to forget this August, when Ulyana, like ordinary people, like ordinary person, stay in ordinary situation for the first time in subway, for the second time for very crowded street, and she had a poster with this notion, with this notes, and keep calm about it. So, and when we discussed with Ulyana about this, it's very difficult, it's very hard to say either it's civil statement or artist statement. So, because it's like a shimmer or flickering statement between civil and artist gesture. And more obviously, we have another example when the group of female art cultural workers and activists, she make activistic video. We are the president of Republic of Belarus. She read the speech of the inauguration speech of the president of Republic of Belarus, to disagree with the statement of President of Lukashenko speech, when he said that women cannot be a president in Belarus, or, for example, the constitution didn't write for women. So, but what is very important for this action, that for this group of cultural workers, very important to mark this gesture not as art gesture, but like a civil statement. For them, they really fear when we discuss it. They are really very fear that when we speak about this video as, first of all, as a piece of art, it leads to decrease the political statements, and to start the process of aestheticization. And they want to avoid it, because they have a very direct political goal. And as well as Olga Kopenkina mentioned, this action, the art of regime, is very important, because this is not, it's also flickering or shimmer action between civil or political protests and artist action, because in this section and in this section, Don't Draw Strike, cultural workers came together on the second part, on this action, to support how to say, the all-state strike. On this action, came together to see the art of regime, to increase their protests against high level of violence. It's very important that it's very important action when cultural worker work together. What is very important, that even protests, not pandemic situation like in many other countries, but protests was the trigger for discussion the artist's work and the creation different infrastructural, different structure for supporting artists and for collaboration artists. So it's very interesting. And the next strategies that I want to discuss is the so-called when we understand about long-term protest, and when we speak about long-term art. And for example, I'd like to show the EEFFF group who create the museum, the so-called the Museum of Future. I should say several words about it, because it's it's completely different strategy in comparison with previous, because in previous we see the direct gesture against, or the gesture about disagreement with something, for example, disagreement with violence, with elections and so on. But in this point of view, they work not with the whole society. Their target audience, or they work not with the whole society, but they work with very direct, very specific community. During 2 months, these artists live in the protest neighborhood. They work together, they live together, they met each other with any other neighbors, and during one weekend, were full of different activities and events. For example, at the same time with this activity, there were lectures, concerts, cooking, eating together, and so on. So during this not festival, but how to say, the weekend activity of neighborhood, they propose their own activity to connection other neighbors, to create and to think about the museum of future. They propose to, they create the workshop, but they use the instrument of first of all, the instrument of political imagination following. Just thinking that we live in future now, and what the Museum of Protest and how the Museum of Protest would be organized. And people start to think about, and it's very important because it was not about imagination in general, but it was a political imagination, and people start to think what is very important for them, what is less important for them, different common sense, or where they have different sense. And what's the next thing is really important, that in comparison with, for example, the first action that I've described, this action and the EEFFF spatially avoid to the medialization of this action. And during our preparation of our exhibition, every day in Mistevsky Arsenal, we asked them to show this documentation in our exhibition, and for them was very ethical to refuse about our asking. Because they say that it was very important to do something in a concrete situation. So, and for example, the next to work with concrete community is work by Nadia Sayaguna, who work with their core prisoners. She was arrested, and she spent 15 days in 2 prisons and in 2 CISOs. And she worked with girls and women who have the same experience. They met together, they discuss, and she organized the space for discussing, for interpretation of this experience, not like a experience of violence, but like a very important experience of care, of political care, and the experience of resistance. So it's 2 examples, and we have examples also. These 2 examples is very important because in comparison with the first part of my speech, these 2 examples are connected not with direct protest just, but for the creation or for the creation infrastructure of the space for that involved not abstract people or general people, but very concrete community that have this and the artists and non-adherents. For the first example, they live together in one neighborhood. For the second example, they have the common experience to live, to spend 15 days in prison, and to reflect and to work with this experience. So I think that we have these two different very important strategy for protest. The first is a direct gest, and the second is to creation support and care infrastructure. That's very important. And the second is long-term, very invisible, very calm, and how to say, very the manner of creation of art that work with concrete society and or concrete community, and as well as the re-understanding the role of art, the artist as a mediator of a communicator. So I'd like to discuss two of this strategy.
Thank you, Antonina. It was really important categorization and actually pretty much embraced, and also maybe later we discuss, because for me it's a bit lacking that participatory mode of creation which I see in EFF and maybe in this kind of drawings from the jail. So because that actually would be very important possibility of artists to develop and protest together with the people, and also overcome that separation which we made difference between the two subjectivities of the crowd and subjectivity of the artist. Okay, but I hope it will be continue after last presentation by Alexei, so you can really start, and yeah, welcome.
Hello, thank you, Dmitry. Thank you, Olga. Thank you for inviting and organizing this event. And yes, thank you for your words, for your inputs, and thank you, Antonina, for really these discussions that we had during these months, and for this collaboration. Because, like, really, it is I see it as quite a nice partnership in work, in research, or in creation of texts and something like that. Yeah, and it was really important. I think it will be still in the next months and years. So I want to come. I have like 3 points, and I'm going to describe a little bit them, like to walk around them. So, and the first one is what is important for me from the input that Olga gave us with the text, and from the input as a reference from this text about events in Egypt, and the references to Occupy Wall Street and others, that in the Belarusian situation, I want to put a special attention at this time of revolution. Yeah, is art possible in time of revolution? Here is for me is like 2 modes of time, right? Time of events, time of the revolution, like in the Belarusian situation, it's August, let's say, and what happened after August, what happens now. It's kind of different phase, August, but still it is kind of revolution thing. And what we have had before. So what we have had, what brought us to this point of August last year, to August 2020, it is actually, for me, it is a work that was conducted by many artists, not only artists, but other cultural specialists, by any, like I say, galleries, institutions of different kind, by NGOs and journalists, probably, that was conducted during the 10s, during this period from the events of 2010 till the last year. And this time, it wasn't just like wasted, or it wasn't just like, something happened in August or last year. No, that was pretty a long work, and probably this time for art, the time for art in the last decade that we had, it was kind of different, like if you want to compare it to Russia or to other countries, because like many artists who came today, who participate today in this exhibition, for instance, like every day in Kiev, so they were quite active in the social and political engagement during this decade. So, and there were different formats of the events, not only the exhibitions, not only gallery formats, white Cubans, etc., but there also were quite a big number of seminars, quite a big number of collaborations with different NGOs. And it's on one point, it's quite an interesting thing. And I can see it as a positive moment that this very engagement happened. But it brought some to us, yeah, it brought some results. But on the other point is kind of put the limits on the artistic practices. We have had this kind of opportunity, the horizon of artistic statements that was quite limited by this engagement, because many artists, they couldn't afford to be less political, for instance, because this political involvement and this involvement with different issues, like for instance, like LGBTQ plus agenda or feminist agenda or ecological agenda, it was quite a big thing in Belarusian contemporary art. Yeah, we have had a kind of official scene where it's linked to official institutions that, as Olga have said, that didn't do much actually for artists, mostly extracted their work, and didn't give any, even not much sufficient fees for their participation in the events and exhibitions. But at the same time, this alternative scene, how we call it, which was concentrated around Gallery U, for instance, or Gallery Cech, or Gallery KH most recently, it was quite active. And it was a kind of sacrifice that was mentioned in this text that was posted before our discussion. Yeah? So this sacrifice already was made by several artists, not in August last year, but before, because a part of their practice that was already socially and politically engaged. It already worked for these changes for quite a long time. So, and also, to be frank, it was, for some of them, for many of them, it was also an opportunity for exposure, an opportunity for being seen, as there are not so much art market indeed in Belarus, and there are not so much private gallery that do pretty good sales and something like that. This engagement, it was something in between of the kind of civil duty that people decided to do, just to be active, and the exposure as a second point, and the opportunity to be presented, to be shown in the galleries in Belarus or at the exhibitions in other countries as well. So it's quite a complex situation in art scene, a particular part of the art scene in Belarus, in Minsk and Brest more particularly. Yeah, that brought us to this engagement, the more mass engagement of artists into the protest, or cultural workers into the protest, because this was quite a collaboration between different actors from different spheres of culture or of civil knowledge and activities during this decade. So that was my first point. And from here, we're coming to the event of revolution, to these events that we are somehow experiencing now. And here also, I can see at least this prolongation of this situation. So it comes to some extreme point, to the point of activity, because before the culture, as the political statements, the political actions, street rallies, and other political activities, open confrontation of the regime, of the current government, or call it whatever you want. It wasn't possible, this direct confrontation. So art and culture, it was like probably in the context of US, the safe zone when one could speak, when one could do their job. So the job is for sure, it is the goal of this job is to bring changes. So slowly, with the help of different specialists, with help of independent journalists, with help of this and that. So it was kind of step by step. This moment was near, and we were coming closer and closer to this. So in the last election, there was just an opportunity, something that triggered, probably coronavirus also and other aspects, but indeed there was a situation before. So and here also, like, I want to mention the thing that I just recalled it, that in year 2014 I was organizing a small discussion in Gallery U, and that was discussion about the political art, or probabilities for art to be political, what the difference. And so there was I remember there was an argument about is it art, or is it a political statement, or is it an activism? And this difference between two was quite crucial for artists, because not everybody wanted to cross this line, cross this border that that was just discussed, because art is really a safe zone. And now when we are coming to the place where there is no safety, when there are no any safe zones, no any galleries, because galleries are closed, they're risky. They're too risky to have. They're not allowed, because they're the point of confrontation, their point of opposition that should be suppressed, obviously. And for me now, the situation after August is more clear somehow, and more obvious. And I didn't have, like Dmitry said, I didn't have much doubts about what this government, or what those state officials who are in charge, what they are. So probably this facade of nice design, or all the possibilities for collaborations with foreign organizations, or with these nice cafes on the nice hipster street or something like that, it was really like quite a good facade. And behind this facade, there is still the machine of violence, as any state is a machine of violence. And probably when the state not controlled, there are not these limitations for the state power. Obviously, it is there. And now that we have seen that during the last months, it's just obvious. It's just on the streets. It's just coming into action. So and because of that, obviously, all those galleries were closed, because they were the points of opposition even before, and all those people who were organizing some projects that were quite challenging these authorities, this status quo, and this legitimacy of the government, they were closed. They're still keeping be suppressed. There are criminal charges and any other repression. So that's quite a clear, obvious situation that we have now. So, and what can art do in this situation of the protest? Because before it was quite active, it was quite right to do art, to do culture, to use these ways of kind of scheming a little bit, talking about culture, but talking about politics, and so doing this and that, playing a partisan as a kind of concept in Belarus, popular in Belarus during 2020, I guess. And so today, what art can do, and what art could do after the August 9th. So because of that, there was much confusion between those artists who were politically and socially engaged before, because now all the kinds of art, artistic language that Antonina mentioned, was on the streets. So there were like plenty of artists on the streets, and so they were the same, pretty similar at least, And that was a kind of confusion what they can do as the professionals, what kind of art they can bring, if to continue this work as kind of significant figures, as heroes who are not afraid to challenge the government in the exhibitions or in these artistic safe zones. If to continue this line, it's probably a little bit strange. It's not so actual. It's not so contemporary, because I guess contemporaneity demanded more direct actions, more direct and obvious involvement into this onto the protest, and not posing as you could do before. Before it was probably effective, but now it's kind of a little bit outdated. So that's kind of my opinion. And here we come into these two modes. For instance, the artist Antonina Slobodchikova, I remember her post from the August, I guess, at the end of August, and she wrote in this post that this time needs no pieces of art, but only placards, only slogans and something like that. And what artists can produce now, it's just some utility, something really useful, because there are not even possibility. I guess, like for me, it isn't much possibility of creating sophisticated works of art during this time, because you need some space for your mind. And when you are inside, when you are in the protest, it's too much emotions. There are no distance at all. So they're quite a quick reactions on this thing, on that thing, and it's literally physical reactions sometimes. So the role of artists here, I can think that it can be more a role of the citizen. Yeah. Or maybe it can be used, the artistic language still can be used, but it is used. What is the goal of using of artistic language? Yeah, the goal is exposure, and the goal is some profit, so they are selling it somewhere, if it's possible. Yeah, later, I don't know, but probably this urgency. Yeah, this art as excess, art as something that is not so necessary. That's something like surplus. It's some I don't know, entertainment or communication, or something that people doing in spare time, going to the galleries or going to some meetings or going to the concerts. And this excess can't work anymore. There are no time for this excess. So this time for urgency. Yeah, and urgency, it's kind of different mode what is requested by those events. And also this creation of value, it is also somehow connected with this mode of urgency. The value is only what happened right in the situation of revolution. Yes. And but concluding, I want to also bring kind of point of advocacy, probably, because I do really think that any critique can demand anything from anybody in such situation of unrest, in such situation of quite intense struggle and quite intense repression, because it is understandable that not everybody is so strong and active. The people have their own lives, have their own feelings, their own psychological states, let's say families, children, other obligations, and sometimes I guess art can be like keeping doing what people used to do. It can be kind of self-help, self-therapy that can bring people through this turbulence, through this time of turbulence, through this time of repression. So, and then probably later it can brought to the public space and can be shown. So that's why I'd rather be here not so critical towards this position or that position. Should the artist be more like active and engaged, or should them be like, just what they naturally feel and want to do in this situation. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Alexei. Thanks, everyone. So I hope we can really have so many entries into the debate because, and actually you nicely sum up so many positions and actually without certain forcing one in favor of the other. And of course, situation is pretty difficult and also very dynamic. So because you speak about August, but August, April, January, it's completely another temporality. And actually, it's quite obvious to mention that actually what might differentiate art from life, it's their own temporality, and what usually artists after Walter Benjamin, to understand something, you need a distance. And the time of turbulence don't provide you a space for distancing. For example, I'm not talking and advocating so-called meta position, but at the same time, like what came into my mind, also very old references to 68 or to Jean-Luc Godard. So when it was my 68, he creates together with other people, comrades, Dziga Vertov group, and was trying to reflect events in the midst of the crowd, in the midst of the street, doing so-called activist cinema. But his, from my point of view, the biggest, so whatever we call masterpiece was Tout va bien, very bitter reaction on what transformation it brought into society, what kind of new political and class composition it revealed, and so on. So that was a piece which mid-time, it was done in 1972, 4 years later. So sometimes I'm also maybe as kind of big position, I would continue your consideration to say not to force artists to be into immediate reaction. So maybe we can judge what Belarusian art would be in 4 years and 5 years from now. And then it might be very, very important statement, which my people expect, or we all expect from the power of the art, because I still believe in art and their possibility to really bring completely new imagination, new kind of way of life, and so on. That's why actually I would like maybe to ask, because actually it was on the list, but at the same time, I would really like to ask you what kind of sustainable new structure, because you told galleries collapse, state culture of collapse, what comes on that ruins, you know, what kind of new alliances, what kind of new composition of artists, new type of union protection, because it's not just about artistic statement, it's about what kind of feasible, tangible structures we can build at this moment of upheavals and repression and so on. That also from my Russian perspective, and not only Russian, I would say it's really, really important, because if we understand that our temporality is limited to that concrete temporality of event, I think we are doomed. So I would say it's about tactic. Tactic is important, super important, but at the same time, what kind of strategy, and strategy for me, it's what type of new communities we manage to sustain, protect, also help them psychologically, and also aesthetically, because art make empowerment. So when people still keep singing the revolutionary song, the revolution will come again, you know what I mean? So if you could reflect on that, and maybe from your practical experience, because I know Antonina also participate in that kind of hybrid activist artist network, so would be really interesting to know how you in Belarus preparing new grounds for next battles and current resistance.
I think, could I start to answer?
Yes, please, yes, of course, yeah.
And maybe Alexei, if you want to add something, I think that today, especially we actually have dramatic situation in Belarus art in context of infrastructure supporters, because almost all gallery closed, and for example, one of the owner of gallery who was under the prison approximately 8 months, as I remember, and the KH, the very important institution in Brest, as Alexei told, also about in great situation. So I think that at the same time we have when we speak about infrastructure at all, not only about the art infrastructures, the opposition infrastructures that creation inside the society, it's a horizontal infrastructure, but this infrastructure is very fragile, and they need a lot of instrument and long-term how to say relation for the work without break and so on. So I think that now we have a gap, but people by people, I think I think that people support to each other, and this supportness is very important, and have not only private, but first of all political point of view, political I don't know idea, because today is very important to support each other. And as I remember, even in our exhibition, for us, it was very important to support all the artists, and to support artists who lives in Belarus, and to make a possibility to visit Ukraine, to support and to give the opportunity to safety in this point of view. So I think that it's also, this structure is also important, but unfortunately we cannot say about stable outside infrastructure, because the protesters, Dima, you've mentioned, always change, and what we want, and the repression of government also always changes. It means that what we're talking about in August is completely different in comparison with today situation. And so I think that I suppose that this people by people supporters. I believe in it, that it helps to create it can be it is able to be a background for new infrastructure. It's my political talk. Yeah.
Yeah, I want to, if you finished, Antonina? Okay. I want to just to bring 2 words to it here, because like, I guess thinking about future is quite crucial. And at least I remember several months ago, we were many activists, or many, like, you know, colleagues were talking about future. We're organizing some panels about future. What should we do next? What should we think about? What should we plan? Now, as I see, like in recent months, starting this year, probably at the beginning of this year, as probably in November, the protests were more or less, mass protests were more or less ceased, more or less finished, and then we're just district protests and something like that. So the street activities quite at the point of very low, near to zero now, and the country comes to natural situation of reaction. So now all the activities quite are repressed, everything repressed, and people try to survive. So there are different strategies of this survival. Somebody have to stay here because their own reasons, somebody have to leave. But I'd call this time now, this time of reaction, like from the government side, and time of evaluation. because what is important to evaluate and understand what has happened. And as I was mentioning before, when you know, as Dima, you was talking also about is when you have no time, no distance to what happened, you cannot understand. You cannot like think clearly what is going on and what should we do next. So that's now is this time is starting when people more or less trying to stay safe. I don't know, inhale, exhale, and start to think about what to do next. And also, as I know, there are several initiatives, mostly like self-support groups, informal, like chats, again, like Telegram chats or something like that, between culture workers, where people just discuss not directly strategies, but the ways how to keep their practices. Because it's not only about some independent curators or not non-affiliated with the institutions, with the mainstream institutions artists, but there are some employees of the institutions, of the state institution, that also quite not so glad to see what is happening. And there are also strategy of this old partisan movement that I was briefly mentioned before, like small actions inside the territory of the enemy, like that somehow brings the results later probably, and slowly like dissolve this monolith of the state power, everything like that. So I guess this will be a long process, but now there are more knowledge, yeah, more practical knowledge, and it's important. And when it will be systematized, and will it be when there will be reflections on this, so then probably the society will be more skillful, more powerful. And I think that what has happened and what's happening now, it is a time for learning. And so the learning is a very very crucial thing of all of this, because before that there were nothing like that in Belarus for like long times, probably even never for the whole history of the country. So that's what I wanted to mention.
Thank you. But at the same time, you know, we also find the similar situation, because actually Antonina already started to mention, because actually it's a serious issue. It's a big crisis of resources. I don't know how it's right now in Belarusian situation, but in Russia, it was already for quite a long time, apart from kind of gallery production, actually for independent kind of critical activities, there was very limited space. Even, you know, Russia much bigger and larger, but at the same time, even for activist networks, there is no kind of tangible ground where you can really rent space, you know, do it maybe in some confidential circles, certain type of practices. Right now, they try to criminalize any form of educational activity. So it's just very fresh movement in Russia. So we don't know yet how it will be implemented. So, and then it really make many people, in particular of young generation, totally depressed, because you don't see the space where you can really survive and produce something. You know, Chaim Sokol, very interesting Russian art, he considered that right now it's time to move to the list of paper, you know, and to walk in the kind of, you know, was Russian expression, to walk in the table, you know, which is possible, but quite depressive, and with the knowledge of that certain form of massive mobilization, certain kind of public communication which involves so many people. But at the same time, what I think that, or at least my impression from far, that Belarusian society demonstrates such incredible level of solidarity, mutual support, and inventions. So that really provides certain hope. And also I would say that compared to Russian situation, it's much more advanced, or at least what it was demonstrated through that kind of urgent mobilization. So I was really, really impressed in many ways, like many of our colleagues. You know, we have here, actually, I haven't mentioned, I don't really need to share, but we made a very weird exhibition of non-artists. And maybe it brings us into that very interesting debate. There was Belarusian diaspora. The guys who are mostly kind of IT or kind of different type of creative jobs who live in Russia for a long time. Some of them even have Russian citizenship, but there was no diaspora before event of a revolution. But when it happens, they start to politically mobilize themselves, doing some actions in front of Belarusian embassy or consulate. And then they come to us and say they would like to make an exhibition about Belarusian revolution. And I guess it was one of the best shows I ever seen, because it was done by people who don't make art. It was completely, you know, it's hard to explain. Maybe I should really show some pictures, but a bit kind of Hirschhorn, you know, style, you know, a lot of the paperwork, you know, the boxes with some Xerox images, wall painting, graffiti. So they bombed the whole gallery. You can be critical about it, but at the same time, in this certain naivety was such amazing energy that compared to more kind of polished, you know, conceptual type of exhibition, which even I see and I don't mind, I absolutely appreciate this kind of artistic practices, but at the same time, that has that roughness and that certain kind of angriness, you know. We made few events with them, so it was also quite interesting, watch some films and discussion. So I was really impressed how, let's say, just the people are able to create something in Rosa House of Culture is not white cube, but kind of white cube. So it was really, really impressive. But maybe we can open floor and maybe some questions comes from audience. I see Mao. Oh yeah, please.
Yeah. Well, first, thank you so much, Olga and Antonina and Alexei, for your very lucid and precise analysis, and sharing also the kind of the actions. And I was interested in Antonina's distinction between the actions that are more, let's say, kind of heroic, and the long-term art, what you describe as long-term art. My question was, is this long-term art still possible in absence of infrastructures, or maybe is even working better in absence of infrastructure, or do you still need infrastructure to feed the kind of long-term interventions? I mean, the example of EEFFF is perhaps more striking because it's an ongoing project. So yeah, that's my question.
I think it depends, because we have examples when it, for example, the long-term, when instrument of arts creates a situation to involve people and to create this the general or the common space of the common experience that's created for the supporting of infrastructure, or how to say, in the gallery or outside the gallery. I remember I didn't mention, but we have example when, for example, Lena Prince and Marina Naprushkina and the Gallery U created the embodiment workshop, when people they create different esquisses and gather together people to make this embodiment to make together. And this picture was concerned with the protest scene, for example, the chain of solidarity. And I think that it's very important because due to this action, we have opportunity to create the practice of future. We can create the future community that create if not the whole infrastructure, because I understand when we speak about, especially when we speak about horizontal infrastructure, it means that it takes a lot of time, it takes a lot of engagement, and not about time, but about how power and strength people should involved in this process. But at the same time, when different people came to this situation, tried to exchange their different experience, I think that is create the future, is the practice of future. And for example, I'd like to return to our exhibition every day. I see that two of my colleagues, curator also is there. We many discussed about the future and the temporality of their protest, and we make it as a metaphor of this process, the expression from the text of the Belarusian artist Olga Sosnovskaya. When she described the time of protest, she used the expression future perfect continuous. It means that when we haven't the line of time, but when we have opportunity to practice future today, but at the same time we are very fear about the past. And I remember a very brilliant work of Alexei Tolstoy about if the past will not end, when he also combine the future and the past. And well, what I want to say that the future is also about infrastructure. So that's why for me it's very important the practice that create situation, that create or try to create this infrastructure, because due to this people start to practice future today.
Thank you, Antonina.
Thanks. Thank you.
Any more comments? Or
I want to just briefly add probably that all this situation is kind of practice in the future for me, actually. All this, what is going on is still the practice of future, because it was kind of delaying of this moment of something else, something new. And last year, this something new just manifested itself. It manifested itself on the streets and this and that, and yeah, we're all inside, but still it's happening now. And it happened somehow so far, like kind of in parallel, yeah, and some chats and some not so open activities, but it's still the manifestation of future. We see it more brightly now. So
can I just also share my concern, because actually right now we are also kind of shocked, because it looks like any type of activity which becomes a little bit more publicly visible immediately becomes almost impossible. The exhibition, the festival which tackles certain issues, even in indirect way, might be shut down, exhibition not open, or comes self-censorship when people simply know by their consciousness that this better not to show or not to tackle these discussions. What would be our answer? Because actually it demands, like, you know, I'm not young guy, and actually I remember Soviet time, which developed a certain kind of language of exodus, because there was certain issue was absolutely impossible to deal in public sphere. Of course, you can sneak some of your artistic work abroad and do kind of full-scale show, even at some alternative Venice Biennial, or I don't know where, everywhere actually, outside of place where you live, you know, or you can simply emigrate, as many people did already in Belarus. So what would be our answer in the situation of that kind of total control? Because before we work with so-called authoritarian but not totalitarian society. But right now, looks like we are slowly entering this kind of stage where any kind of articulation, enunciation sounds less and less possible. So would be that kind of dissident answer which we knew from Soviet time would be our future, or you expect that it will be something happening? And of course it prepare, for example, you remember that actually perestroika, when things, the systems start to collapse, then it becomes quite incredibly present everywhere, because it was real demand for certain kind of so-called non-official art. So for me, that actually kind of new border between official and non-official, how it will be structured again, or is it not urgent issue? Olga, please, if you can, I'm sure you understand what I'm talking about.
Well, for me, this question sounds a little tricky, because I think we already live in some kind of totalitarian. And I'm not only talking about corporate, corporate capitalism that creates this kind of enclosure, right? That encloses everything, that every gesture, even the most radical gesture, becomes so depoliticized in our exhibition spaces and so on. But I'm also talking about political realities and democracies, like Western democracy, like, for example, in US, what's happening in the US now, that it's like also a big political upheaval with Black Lives Matter and recent last elections. But there, just yesterday, I heard that many states started passing their absolutely draconian laws that prevent any kind of protest in the future, in the physical space, so that they actually will incriminate people for participating in the unpermitted protests. They also allowed the cars, for example, the drivers, to hit the protesters, and they grant them immunity for hitting the protesters. Wow. So these laws were passed in Oklahoma, in Florida yesterday. Florida is like the most horrible state. It's going to be passed in Iowa, and Ohio, and many. So we actually getting this backlash everywhere in the world, because of this activism, because of so many revolutions already have happened. So, and their forces, that they trying to consolidate too, and they're trying to respond this way. So this is why I think that this totalitarianism is slowly getting into that, and it's just like in Russia and Belarus, it's gotten the much higher level and much more horrible, takes like much harsher forms. And this is why it's so difficult. But this is why I was thinking about my question. I wanted to formulate my question to our Belarusian participants. What do you think the rest of the world and people from outside, what do you think they can learn from, your situation now, from your mobilization and from your despair? Because I think that there are things that we can learn from you.
Thank you, Tonya. Alexei, would you like to comment? We have learned a lot. One thing which we learned, even a few 100,000 of people on the street can't change this system, And that was quite impressive for us, because we are so far away from that. And actually, it's not just what we learned, but actually what Putin learned. Not even about few thousand people on the street. Never, never. And that for us, it really was quite recently very shocking lesson. But at the same time, if you, maybe Tony and Alexei, I have quite a straightforward comment, because actually what came into my mind right now in few recent discussion, actually that so-called China model, where you have one ruling party, which no one can contest. It's absolutely kind of closed group of ruling class. And open censorship. So we have quite serious example of exhibiting in China where best Western curators tell us, okay, I invite this work, but I'm not sure if censor will allow that to exhibit. I say, and then you close the show as a protest. They say, no, we don't close the show. Dmitry, you are naive. It's big money. Of course, we do the show without this piece. And we suggest you to offer another piece. We offered another piece. It was not allowed again, you know? And I said, and now, where is the limit? They say, you know, they don't really tackle the whole composition of our biennial or museum show, but okay, it will be without your work. Very simple. So the West absolutely easily co-opt with regime in Arab countries, which not allow definitely certain statements, and most of artists from the West, most critical one, accepted, you know? That's kind of, again, that kind of dystopian future which we all somehow right now facing. So, and I don't know, for me, what would be the answer? Again, back into that kind of marginal, as Alexei explained, also partisanship position, but without even partisanship. You simply try to keep as far as distant to society as possible. But in Belarus, I guess the promise that actually the majority of society on your side, it's actually the problem with Russia, because we are absolutely definitely in my tiny minority, again, you know, as a recent protest showed. And in this marginal situation, you might be somehow protected because they're not yet interested in it, and we can do quite a lot of stuff for very limited audience. But at the same time, definitely streets and broader public and addressing societies at large is not really the case. So sorry for that kind of very random speculation, but it's my impression for today.
I can go briefly through all the questions that I just wrote down.
Yeah, we have time. Some people left, but we have certain circle of to continue.
Yeah, I just go briefly, like about learning about this and what to learn from Belarus, from the to the people in other countries. I believe that there are two parties I think that are learning now. One party is kind of those who would like to change something, and the other party who wants to keep the status quo. So, and everybody is learning about this. Like, it's not only Putin learns, but like, in other countries, like I guess also there should be analysis of all the situation that somehow just like several hundred people come into the street and all they have these white, red, white flags, and nobody knew where those people were before, but they're like kind of ready, and they're ready and going out, and like, and before there was nothing, like, for years. And so probably, like, for me, it's about technologies and about persuasion and about the information, the spread of the information. So I'm a bit critical to this last presidential campaign, as I don't see it more as a political campaign, but more like technological campaign. Because we don't have in Belarus, we never had it in Belarus, so quite a structure of political parties and different backgrounds of political thought. Yeah, different, like, for instance, like leftist party or like Green Party or like Social Democrats or something like that. No, unfortunately, and that wasn't even, that couldn't, like, just factually it wasn't there since never, I guess. Yeah. So in the beginning of 90s, it didn't happen as a like multi-party party structure. Yeah, it didn't happen. So, and then it was a president. So, and so this was a vote against. And I guess the information is a key, and technology like internet is a key to this. Yeah, it is not new, but these alternative structures, they still can be created, not in the physical space, not in some galleries and institutions. They can be created online, like it was. We had like this alternative central election committee that was in Telegram bot. Yeah, it's kind of, and why? And it's not about like who counts. It's about who people believes. Yeah, and if the majority of people believe to Telegram bot and some geeks, some programmers, so probably it is so. Yeah, it's about the authority and about the legitimacy of the power. So yeah, so I think that it's the important thing is this alternative structures that are already present. And is it a China model or not? I don't know, because it's quite hard to say, because there is censorship on online on this stuff. We are not still there. It's quite a risk, actually. It's the highest risk. It's the control of the internet, control of the information traffic about this, because this communication, it can still run alternatively in Belarus, and I believe in Russia and other countries. And this can be a background for changes. It can be an opportunity for changes. So that, because this space is not only physical. All this situation that had happened last year, it wasn't in physical space before the last moment. So it was mostly in connections, mostly in minds of people, mostly in and even on not on the websites sometimes. Yeah, because we have had this structure that we're running Telegram channels. Yes. Or in chats, on local chats of the yards. So it's Chinese, yeah. And I want to, yeah, this can be alternative. And I want to briefly comment on this situation in Russia and Belarus. How to compare this. I think that it is more complex situation in Russia. It's more complicated, and it's really different, because I'm not sure that I can state that we have like this majority of support for the opposition figures or something like that. It's still diverse. Not so many people, I don't know, trust Tikhanovskaya completely, yeah. But Tikhanovskaya, the candidate, it's not a, like, original candidate that come to the voting polls. Yeah, she's a candidate for somebody else, for her husband. Yeah, that everybody just agreed. Okay, we're going to vote for her. Yeah, and this trust is kind of different, but there is an agreement that there should be changes. But it is impossible to keep this past running in the loop, and that's general agreement, I believe in. So, because it can be different modes how it should be reorganized, but it should be reorganized. This is a consensus. In Russia, it's different situation totally, because Russia is multinational state, like huge multinational state, and there are still this post-colonial issue there all over the place. So a lot of problems that still are not fully articulated even. Yeah, so it's quite a mess, guys. I don't know what you're gonna do with this.
Yeah. But can we imagine another approach to politics, which maybe will not be so straightforward, confrontational, but at the same time keep certain kind of possibility for change and organizing communities? For example, again, I'm talking from Russia, and I would say that right now we have quite complete crash of all activist network, which were kind of associated with the new left and social movements. But at the same time, what really comes to the fore, it's feminist movement. So actually, it's really growing. I see in our environment that most of participants are female and feminist and have different agenda. So we have quite a unique situation when three waves of feminism coming at once, you know, not like one after another, but different approaches from. And it's quite unique. And I would say at the same time, it also creates a certain kind of silencing and repression, but at the same time not at the same scale as, like, let's say, Navalny figure and around him or other kind of direct opposition. Of course, there are some excess, like the case of Yulia Tsvetkova, but it's more kind of local and also quite weird. And unfortunately, could I imagine more, but at the same time, still, and even larger institutions allow more and more these voices. I would say the same with LGBT, despite the pressure and certain kind of, shutting down the events or festivals. At the same time, it's become more and more present, and even, you know, Russia sent to Eurovision female singer who are obviously pro-LGBTQ plus position, and also quite openly feminist. So, you know, that's kind of field which not totally colonized by the power would allow us to imagine different forms of artistic articulation and possibilities to build growing communities. And then inside them could be possible different debates, and certain debates on aesthetics, because for me right now, I also see, and we reflect in my set of assemblies, that it was actually, we made very interesting debate with Jana Graham about that shift from criticality to care, for example, that for me right now also the many quite explicit turn in art which I'll see comes from that kind of finishing of that kind of critical approach and starting to build something which is, let's say, less critical, or maybe I call it to criticize with care, to care with critique. So it's also opens up completely new aesthetic articulation, which I wouldn't underestimate. So I think it's really give us certain possibility even inside that authoritarian regimes, and maybe, as Olga said, it's actually worldwide in different forms, offer us certain possibilities to survive and actually keep some promises for the future and develop them. Well, some people coming. I don't know who is Andrei Dureka, but let's welcome Andrei.
Andrei Dureka is a friend.
I see.
Belarusian artist. Yeah, I wanna ask maybe people, maybe those who remained.
Yes, exactly, because I see.
Maybe
I don't know if it's Olga Sosnovskaya or not. Ulyana, I definitely see it was the artist whom you showed. Yes, Tonya. Brilliant work. Remind me also Silent Picket by Sirenka. You know, but at the same time also more kind of politically urgent, so to say. So thanks, Ulyana. It's really very powerful work. I have seen it many times and really was impressed. So it's really kind of iconic, I would say. Irie, maybe you from Tallinn, you know many situations from outside. You know, I don't know other people. Oh, Irish. How are you?
Hi, everyone.
Yeah.
Thank you for,
yeah.
I am in Thailand, yes. I don't really have any questions. I just wanted to say thank you for this very interesting talk. And I have been trying to follow these events in Belarus over the past months, and I think there is something very interesting happening in terms of this relation of art and politics, and also what has been touched here as well. I think what is maybe most interesting from my perspective is also when, because artists also, they tend to claim this position of monopoly over image production, and what happens when this political image production is happening on such mass scale. So I think these kinds of very interesting questions come up, and yeah, I just want to say that I found it very interesting, your conversation, but I don't have any sharp questions now to pose.
We all don't have, we have so many that finally it's none. I mean, yeah, but at the same time, I guess it's really very important situation, and I'm sure it will be more kind of events. I was also amazed. I was preparing kind of impromptu exhibition for 1st of May, and I passed through that collection of Belarusian posters online, protest posters, which actually I came from the website of the exhibition in Arsenal. I don't remember what the name of these people who did it online. You can freely download it in full resolution. And I was really amazed because
I think that Maxim Temenko, one of the creator of this.
He's with us. So Maxim, it's really, I was so impressed because right now we also, with a lack of political imagination, I see right now, for example, just before Navalny protest, many people complain because, if you really look back, for example, 2011, 2012, the first protest, so-called winter protest in Russia, was so playful. Sociologists really collect incredible amount of that so-called visual anthropology when people draw their own signs and making posts. And right now, Greg is back. Yeah. And right now, many people, not many, but few people complain that they don't know what to say. How, because poster, I work a lot with a poster, it's my favorite medium. But when I saw this collection, I was said, oh my God, I was really, and actually I was about to write maybe to you, because Alexei Beresonov gave me some contact, because just to let you know that we would like to print few posters with all credits and show them and Rose House of Culture on our 1st of May.
You're very welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. But I was really, wow. And different, some of them have authorship, others not. So it was also a very interesting mixture of kind of creation of professional, let's say professional graphic, or maybe just artists and just people. So it looks like, or at least I couldn't find any author. Yes. Good. Well, there is one question I'm an American artist who is coming to Belarus in a year for an artist residency. I'm trying to learn as much as I can until then. Thank you very much for this discussion. Thanks, Jane. Thank you. I hope you can welcome American guy if it will be possible to come to Belarus. Here you are in 1 year. We hope it will. What kind of residency in Belarus?
CEC Arts Link.
I see.
Yeah, so we're just waiting.
With Susan Katz, or it's another people?
Yeah.
I see.
Yeah, it's a very, very good moment to go to Belarus. So you can learn a lot, but you also have to watch your back,
I was just met Susie a few days ago, and she was so desperate because, the whole year there was no residencies. I was trying to do something online. And most of people who planned to come to Petersburg, because we were talking about Petersburg mostly, and they were all completely lost because it was so hard to follow, and online residency was disaster right now. And actually with the escalation of Cold War, I'm pretty sure it's also similar case for Belarus. So all kind of American institution in our context looks super suspicious. And I don't know how long and how far it might escalate. looks like it's quite unlimited. Yeah, so, and yeah, for that. But it's not just about US institutions. For example, if we talk about sustainability of that kind of networks, for us as a dissident was always a space to rely on different Western institutions, but I guess it's not the case of Belarus. But recently they start to attack Heinrich Böll Stiftung, Rosa Luxemburg Stiftung for certain conspiracy against Russian regime. So right now we don't know when they stop. So it will be really last possibility for many people continue research, continue certain practices, get some productions, get some visibility, and it might easily be over in one day. It's super simple.
Dima, I wanted to ask, maybe that would be the concluding question about what, because we were talking about strategies, what to do and how artists should act. I think one of the strategies that was mentioned here briefly, and because we brought up Maxim website Kult Prosvet, so maybe one of the strategies is archival strategies. So how, because I know that there are several projects that is trying to archive what have already been done right during this protest by artists and non-artists and collaborative works on this. So, and I see this website, the Kult Prosvet, as also as attempt to, you know, archive, even so I know that artists produced posters particularly for this site, right, to be uploaded on this site. But at the same time, there were some slogans, that posters that were, and signs that were created during the protest and on the street also was brought to this archive.
No, it was amazing actually interface where you'll see how it was actually picture from the protest and the sign. Amazing.
I actually had a question about that, if it's really like correct to do this kind of combinations, because some works were produced for as a artwork by professional artists. Even so, it made available to be used by protesters, but at the same time, it's professional artists, and some posters were anonymous, you know, that they were created by anonymous authors and brought to this website. Anyway, this is just one example, but I know that Alexei Borisonok is also working and created an archive project. So maybe some of you can comment on that. So how urgent is this strategy of archive?
Well, I think it's really important, and we mentioned, because I am totally sure that archive can be not only the archive like a research archive, but like a political activist gesture also. And for me, it's very important because such project as Kult Protest Me, or for example, we mentioned in our article the project by Sergei Shabokhin when he interviewed people and to create the main to create the map of the consumption of different concepts of protests is very important, because it's very important to collect before the fact that it become the part of history, or the official history narrative, because before it keep to the book narration, because it's totally not totally death, but is the power. It's more about power. So I think that this strategy as archive, as creation of archives, it's opportunity to create a different narration and different story, or how to represent it is very important. And of course, it's a political, it's the political idea.
Yeah, I would like to comment briefly, as it's quite in line what I already said. I guess like the general problem that we had, it more like related to art and culture, and maybe to other other areas of knowledge in Belarus, yeah, it was the problem of the material, the problem of sources and texts. And there are like not only the texts in foreign languages, like in English, for instance, but the texts in Belarusian about the situation in art, the situation in culture, in different spheres. And the analysis is it's quite a thing that we lack. And I think the process of learning, not only archiving but interpreting it, working with the archives, writing texts, and I don't know, stating some opinions and keeping discussions, that creates a background for the solid structure for further actions, for further work. So that I think like this experience, it really should be evaluated and maybe not like put into one solid option, one solid version of it, but with a plural, with a multitude of opinions. It should be somehow systematized or presented at least. Yeah, that can be a quite a nice work for the future.
No, here I totally agree, because actually, and also what Alexei already mentioned, because right now we are a little bit confused because we discuss two modes of operating, because announcement, it's more kind of position of artists into the bright moment of revolution, where is no time for art. But right now in dark times, it's time for archiving, time for contemplation, time for reconsideration, for building certain kind of sometimes even clandestine forms of communication, confident circles. So it's completely another kind of issues, and completely another form of aesthetics and mental state, I would say. So that's, unfortunately, we were kind of moved by time into that kind of new direction, which is absolutely fine, but at the same time, it's not undermines the question in which we made in announcement. So yeah, I'm also right now working on one big archive project, and actually Plekhanov archive and its role for revolution, for example, because we know that most of places, or unfortunately our Egyptian colleagues couldn't join us, Philippe and Jasmina. They made a film. It was shown at Venice Biennial at German Pavilion, actually one of the most brilliant films, how workers in Egypt were trying to make a strike during revolution. Maybe you saw it. It was quite as powerful as Hitte Steyer piece, which was next to that piece. Actually, yeah, and now they actually built a website which actually constitutes from different fragments of their filming and different films of the protest of Arab revolution. Actually, it's very interesting that because of that waves, we come to that situation where we actually, because of political limitation and different other, maybe emotional one, where people concentrate more and more on that kind of historical work, which I absolutely agree, give us certain possibilities to move further in the future. So yeah, that's really, I guess, would be also possible right now. And this poster archive, I guess it will be also one day quite important to.
I'm going to send a link to this project that Dmitry mentioned, since we.
I think it's open on my table.
Yeah, I have this because it got Veralist prize, or at least it was nominated for the prize. So I have information about this project. So I'm gonna post it.
I see. It's right now. It's on the screen right now. Oh, yeah, yeah, it's super.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really amazing. Anyway, if we more or less exchange of things, for me it's also very interesting because we just also created new film, because also I guess certain type of film production, because film essay, it's really also possibility to reflect and to also make it as a kind of educational tool, which now people. Yelena Gapova, oh my God. So I think we can slowly move into Russian language. Yeah, I haven't seen Yelena for a long time. Anyway, so, привет, Елена. Thanks for joining.
Добрый день.
We almost finished. Yeah, you can.
Well, unfortunately, I couldn't join earlier.
Yeah. Would you like to comment something, or you'd like to listen?
But I just joined. There's nothing I can say. Well, if there's something I can listen to.
Where are you now?
In Michigan.
In Michigan.
Yes, pretty far away.
Pretty far away, yeah. Anyway, so anyone would like to sum up, or we more or less there? But at the same time, I would really try to maybe finish on optimistic note that I'm still believe in incredible power of art in different mode, in the mode of the protest, in the moment of reflection, in the dark time, in the bright times. We should really insist that art has certain power which people need. And actually sometimes, because again, I mentioned before that we work a lot with the Zapatista, and sometimes when you talk to simple people, you'll see how they believe in art. It's very interesting that our convention move us permanently into that kind of self-negating mode. We are so close to capital, we incorporated into all that machines. But when you talk to simple people, they say, wow, you know how we come to the protest, we coming through the songs, we coming through the imagery, we coming through the films. That's why the artist plays incredibly important role in maintaining that certain kind of radical and resistant imagery. And it's also, from my point of view, it's really quite generic anti-capitalist activity, because it built on completely another machine of desire and imagination, opposite to capitalist estrangement and monetarization and so on. Without this belief, I could hardly continue.
Well, many activists, and especially left activists, they talk more and more about the end of art, about this disillusion of art and this kind of practice when everybody is an artist, or at least potentially, right, and potential. And the Zapatista movement is a very good example. And also art is not only just a human necessity, but it's also a tool to create communities, right? So that when you produce the painting together, like mural, or you weave something together, some tapestry, and making flags together, and things like that. But another part of the left academics still believe in autonomy, right? Art autonomy, that art can be an instrument of revolution only when you, or let's say political transformation, only when you allow certain autonomy for the art, right? So when art is protected and cultural field has some kind of like sacred, right, space where things can be rehearsed, right, and happened. And I don't think that these two positions some kind of reconciled. So I think that it's still, and I mentioned, I even posted here this concept of militant art, right, by Deere, but that I think John Roberts very much agree with and trying to promote it, so that art have this militant characteristics only when it's autonomous, only when it speaks out of its own autonomy, right? So when artists go to the palace, Belarusian artists go to the Palace of Art, the main state-run exhibition space, and they stage this action of protest, they talk from the autonomy, right? Because they kind of like negate their traditional exhibition practices, and they say, no, we don't want to exhibit our work and our art with you anymore. We want to actually create non-art, right? So, and we want to make this action of solidarity, and we want to show you something else that you will probably not like. So yeah, I think that this kind of negativity, right, that artists demonstrated is actually quite interesting tactics, and it can be possible only from inside, from position of autonomy, right, or some sort of autonomy. Anyway, just a thought.
You know, I have quite different, you know, that's very Adornian approach to autonomy, which is conventional. I'm coming from a Marxist position of autonomy, like autonomy of living labor from capital. So I'm against that concept of the capitalist totality. So what was a great invention of Marxism, that living labor have autonomy from the capital. That's why it can resist and overthrow the dictatorship of the capital. And actually, I'm sorry again for that, my own speculation, but at the same time, that really is a certain hope that actually that kind of workers' autonomy, like autonomia operaria, as you know, that Italian movement, that for us, very interesting, can be translated into cultural production. When we say that capitalist relation in cultural world, so artist has autonomy, but it's not Adornian autonomy of that formal innovation. No, it's not. It's autonomy of dream, autonomy to institute another type of relation. And that, for me, is a crucial difference from Adornian position. Anyway, I'm also quite, you know, because you're also talking at the end of that proposal about autonomy. So yeah, it's quite complex reflection. Maybe Greg, biggest specialist in autonomy issues.
Not really, but I think, Dima, this question of autonomy can't be separated anymore from the way capitalism as an effective, or you want to call it a networked concept, is sucking that down into itself and trying to extract value out of that somehow, right? So yeah, as much as I'm also in the school of autonomy, autonomous or operata, you know, Italian approach, I think we have a very complicated situation. Tronti's idea of the social factory has now become so widespread that is there an autonomous space for anyone at all? Is that even possible? And I put forward a different term, which is to say we're kind of in a bare art world now, like as stealing from a Gambin or retooling a Gambin, where nobody thinks anymore that art is separated from ideology. We all see those connections. And we have to sort of acknowledge that nakedness. That's where I think that's where we are at. And the flip side being that capital is now using many things that artists innovated to extract some kind of value. I don't know what it is exactly. No, it's a subsumption. It's a subsumption.
But maybe this is the strength of the Belarusian artists, that because the capital is not yet kind of enclosed everything there, and so there were no spaces like Garage or Pinchuka Art Center, you know, like created in Belarus. So the capital is not like that kind of oligarchical capital is present. So this is why artists kind of still have ironically, right? Artists in Belarus do have autonomy in this sense of like in relation to labor, right? Yeah, because I can see how quickly they organized, especially, and artist designers is actually got in the center, because they started producing this all of a sudden, this iconic posters, right, like Vladimir Cesler and Anna Redko. So, and this is artists whose job is so well defined, right? So that they knew exactly who they are, and all of a sudden they became these political activists, right? While never been political activists before. Maybe Tesla was, I'm not sure, but others were not. So, and yeah, this kind of position in between, that maybe this is what makes it so strong and spectacular, this process.
I'd like to add a little bit on this. I'm a bit critical about this absence. Okay, we don't have these institutions like Garage or like Pinchuk or like VAC in Russia or Ukraine. Yeah, but still, this it was Antonina talking about this position of hero, position of the hero artist, the position of individual practice. It's quite problematic. I really find it problematic. I can recall that last year, in the beginning of summer, during this pandemic time, we were invited with Antonina actually to join the conversation about these art practices during this pandemic time, during the lockdown. We didn't have lockdown in Belarus actually, but what to do? Yeah, all the galleries were closed, and they closed themselves actually because it wasn't a mandatory stuff, but it was kind of ethical thing. And when we were trying to discuss the issue of labor, of artistic labor, coming from our perspective, to use this time. I do remember we had a conversation also on Zoom, with Dmitry and with others, with Dmitry and others also, like around the same time. So we came with this problematizing of the labor of artists in the time of lockdown to the institution, self-organized institution, let's say, Kaha Gallery. It's a small gallery, really community-based space based on some theater activity and art-related activities. So people couldn't support our theme, our inputs, because they were mostly thinking about, okay, we're doing shows, we're producing artworks, and we want some future for us. Not if income is a kind of dream, or incidentalization is a dream, and because of it isn't so problematic. Like, people can see the problem of the big institution in other countries. Here, people cannot see these problems. So it's still quite there are opportunities. There are other modes of self-organization of the community. Community sees it in different mode, I guess. But still, they're kind of utopia of waiting for some big business that can come and give us some money.
Yeah, but it's a little bit different from what I was saying, because I was exactly saying that because of the lack of the institutional support and infrastructure for artists, this precariousness, and also any absence of artist fees, and right, so that artists don't exhibit their works but they don't get paid, and because it just doesn't, this idea doesn't even like come across the the organizer's mind. Anyway, I was what I meant is that this state of precariousness can be inspirational also. So it can be motivation, for artists to lead the political transformation and revolution. So the state of precariousness is kind of, this is what Badiou was talking about, right? So that this is where the militancy of art is forged. And I think that it's important that the community is realizing that and trying to gain something from that, from this moment.
If I can say, if you're interested, because actually right now I'm more and more returning to that concept of that gift culture and gift economy, because the artists operate, from my point of view, and I can actually articulate it more profoundly, that actually what artists do is not real labor. It's more kind of a gift. And I know that it sounds maybe a little bit suspicious and mysterious, but at the same time, I guess as long as we continue to speak about that radical anti-capitalist activity, the gift is the last resort of that certain kind of abundance of energy and willing to contribute. Of course, I'm not talking a lot at all that we don't need to fight for labor rights and so on. But for me right now, when more and more artists return to that position that artistic work as the same job as any other job should be remunerated, should be paid fairly, it's fair enough. But at the same time, they forget that kind of surplus. And surplus, for me, considered through that kind of a gift, idea of the gift. And gift is a very incredibly powerful thing. So, and it also not innocent. It has others, dark side, like we know from Badiou, you know, that actually it really only possibility to demand certain sovereignty in that kind of production relation. So, and not subjugate to the power of the capital. So I guess that actually the gift is the most subversive and most radical idea which artists can really implement.
But do you remember that through the gift economy, the society robbed each other? Because if someone give a gift, you should give gift more and more and more. Yes. So it's also can be described as. But what I want to add, how the position of hero became when we don't think about the artist as a practice, is a real practice, is connected with economical, political situation. It's very easy to become a hero because you don't do something inside the society, but you make a gift. And so it's a short, it's not the direct, but it can be the next step for the meta position.
I understand what you mean. And of course, that's what I mentioned by dark side of the gift. You know, potlatch culture by indigenous North American tribes was actually banned by US and Canadian government because it was so destructive. You know, the whole tribes really burn everything down and, you know, then become really poor. But everyone remembers that actually incredible celebration of potlatch, and memories come from one generation to another. Yeah, it's true, but at the same time, everything has a dark side, you know, capitalism too. And also about hero, I wouldn't simply undermine this position. I guess especially, you know, we have quite serious exchange with Olga because in that Arab, in this Egypt article, it was discussion about martyrdom and what is being martyr, and Olga used metaphors that artists sacrifice their profession, their talent for something else. And I was arguing, for me, it's not martyrdom. It's not sacrification, really. It's something else. But anyway, it's possible metaphor, which I absolutely agree. But at the same time, I would say, you know, also it brings us to very vivid and current political debate. What means the return of Navalny into prison? I was also criticizing that he simply became like Jesus Christ, you know, by his sacrifice, he wanted to raise up whole movement, but not everyone, Jesus Christ is a real Jesus Christ. It was so many fake Jesus Christ, Jesus Christ which came into wrong situation. But at the same time, I would say, like, you know, Rabbi Emroué made amazing piece on martyrs in Lebanon, because it's a big, big culture, which I wouldn't underestimate, especially for revolution. And actually, artist as a real martyr who ready to die for his own or her own art or for her own possibilities to be present. could really spark certain movement. So I would say that actually also it's mysterious things, as many things about gift, but I wouldn't say they are not material. They are material, as they can really create a certain kind of spark and many movements actually coming from that singular gesture. At least my position. Of course, you can also judge like a real sacred act. It's very hard to judge because they can be fake, but at the same time, you always recognize them about the after effects on society. Sorry, we are really far away from, but I guess it makes sense to speculate. Promotion, but you might find a Greg right in the interest of Hiddenstein. Aha, you mean Greg is with us? Yeah. Okay, I will write this. I will read this. Data democracy. Okay, guys, I don't know if you have energy because actually to stay online, and most of you right now it's already late. Somehow I see how light behind our windows disappeared. And right now we are in the dark. Oh, you have nice. I love this Zoom tricks, how people move from one window.
Yeah, thank you very much. It was a very nice discussion, and yeah, finally I got to talk to you guys.
Yes, yeah, I'm also very happy that we met, and thank you so much for organizing it, and I hope we continue our struggle and our journey together. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for invitation.
Thank you, Antonina. Alexei.
Yeah.
Thanks.
It was a pleasure to talk.
Yeah, and we'll try to catch up with other debates which happened today simultaneously. We didn't really wanted to undermine them. It just happened really, I didn't expect. But I'm sure it was also a very important thing. I will be in Vienna soon, hopefully, if we manage to travel and meet Olga and Alexei, and yeah, maybe we can continue. Okay, and Tonya, come back to Moscow safe. Don't stay in terrible Turkey. It's really, yeah. You know, she's in Turkey completely blocked because there is no planes. It's Corfu. It's locked down, which announced from yesterday.
On vacation, or what do you do in Turkey?
Yes, I have a vacation.
Okay, I stop transmitting. Yeah, so yeah, and see you guys. Ciao.
Thank you.
Bye bye. Thank you.
Bye bye. Bye.